And let me just invite our first speaker. We have Rahel here. Rahel is near me today, and I'm super excited that he agreed to talk today because he's the winner of 3 Lab hackathons. It's really a lot, and he had really a lot of passion to work on all these projects. He was the winner of AI 21 Hackathon, Cohere, and Stable Diffusion, while he collected all the technologies I believe we had here. So I will be really excited to hear his talk today. Rahil, are you with us? Just unmute.
Yes.
Let us know.
Hi, Alicia.
Great.
Hi.
Hello. Happy to
It's a
have you.
pleasure to be here.
What do you want to talk today? Could you please introduce a bit this talk to people?
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm here to talk about how to come up with winning ideas. My background is in software engineering, and I've done a bit of data science as well. I did minors in computer science and physics, and I'm interested in problems that can be solved by AI. In my free time, you can find me reading, bouldering, or binging murder mysteries.
All right, that's really great. Especially bouldering. I guess we'll talk with you about it after the session. But still, thank you for introduction. And I guess if you are ready, you may share your presentation and we will be starting to kick off. All right, I can see it now. Maxim, are we ready with presentation as well? Good. Okay. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, fantastic. So, hi everyone. My name is Rahel Gunaratne. It's my pleasure to be here. So I'm here to share my experiences on hackathons and talk about specifically teamwork and communication and how to come up with ideas for hackathons. So I'm not going to restate this part. I already did it, but we can move on to the next. So yeah, as Alicia said, I've won the AI Transformers Hackathon, Stable Diffusion Hackathon, a Metaverse Hackathon, and most recently the AI 21 Labs Generative AI Hackathon. So for the most recent hackathon, which was AI 21 Labs, I used web crawling, semantic search, and large language models to create a question answering tool for specific information. And it allows you to find specific information and provides answers in a clear, understandable way, and includes sources and more information should the user need it. So my inspiration for that was because I was struggling to find a specific bit of information in some documentation. So I thought, and the search bar was not helping me at all. So I thought, how do I fix this? And I remember a long time ago during a Stable Diffusion hackathon, I was talking with Alicia, and uh, during our conversation, she said, "You found very specific problems or pain points, and you're solving it with AI." And that's pretty much it. But great ideas, they have a little bit more to it. So I'm going to talk more about that as well. So first, I want to talk about the changing technologies. Over the years, there's been a series of changing technologies, and that greatly impacts how businesses are able to make money and make profits. So here we have a chart, and we see series funding in 5-year groups. And you can see something happened between 2006 and 2010 that just had a huge boom for the industry. And that is AWS, Amazon Web Services. So it let large companies basically outsource their infrastructure to a dedicated service. They didn't need to worry about databases or servers. All that was handled by AWS. Um, but nowadays, you have problems with large companies, and it's a problem specifically known in reinforcement learning, and that's the explore versus exploit dilemma. So if you're trying to explore, well, then you're going to develop new products, you're going to enter new markets, you can invest in new tech, but you're not sure of the gains from that. You're not sure if that it's going to make money. So big companies will usually do exploitation instead. They'll leverage existing knowledge, and those have guaranteed returns. So they might be lower returns, but they're guaranteed returns, and they optimize existing processes, which is less risky. But the issue with that is that might lead to stagnation. One of the big things that happened with Google this past year was their code red for ChatGPT and the worry that it was going to replace Google. And that was partly a result of them being caught flat-footed. They were stagnated. So the old way of doing startups is that you do a small part of what a bigger company is doing. So, for example, companies are outsourcing their IT services and their HR services to companies that are dedicated on providing those. Um, so that's usually the old way of doing it, and there's a lot of benefits to doing that. The company will pay less for that service compared to an in-house division. That the company, like the IT and HR company, they can be focused on that specific domain, so they'll be up to date with current technologies because they're dealing with multiple companies, but they still have a singular focus. Uh, and also the benefit with taking a small part of what a bigger company is doing is that they have a tried and true market. They've the big companies have proven that there's a market for that product. So if you can just take that and make it a little better or a little cheaper, then that's a slice of something you can do. But with LLMs, they're fairly new. Like about 7 or 8 years ago, we couldn't even detect a bird in a photo, and now you can generate whatever you want, really. So they're fairly new, and a lot of companies haven't integrated those that technology yet. So 5 years from now, I'd see a lot of companies with AI chatbots. There do exist companies with AI chatbots, but a lot of them are decision tree focused. You know, they don't incorporate LLMs, which is huge for CRM. So my point is that like all this new technology, large language models and stable diffusion, they're going to have a similar effect that AWS had on the industry. It's going to be much easier and much cheaper to have high quality CRM specifically in terms of data collection or question answering. And CRM applies to every company. Every company has customers that they have to handle. So now I want to talk a little bit more about my hackathon experiences, and I'll talk more about teamwork and communication, and some general rules to increase productivity. So number one, I think this is a common misconception, but brainstorm sessions in voice chat are usually not good. And this is because one person can talk at a time and everybody else has to listen. So it slows things down. In addition, you can have group think, which can lower creativity. Instead of critically thinking and evaluating an idea, you're instead focused on maintaining harmony and agreement with the others. In addition, it tends to favor dominant personalities. So people with extroverted personalities, they'll tend to shine through. But there's no indication that extroverted people have, there's no correlation between extroversion and better ideas. But it is true that business does favor extroverts. But an interesting contradiction to that is that the majority of CEOs actually describe themselves as introverts. There's a lot more to talk about the introvert extrovert ideal, but I would recommend reading Susan Cain's book called Quiet. It's very insightful. She talks about the biological reasons for it, how extroverts and introverts perform in different situations, and what skills are typically associated with them, how to get the best out of it. So instead of brainstorming in voice chat, you can brainstorm over text. So something like Discord is a great medium for communication. And this is because you can reread the messages for clarification. You have a written record of it, so you'll know exactly what everybody's talking about at any point in time, and you can message people if you want more clarification of that idea. Then I'm not saying you shouldn't have discussions. You should still have discussions. But when you do have discussions, you should always have a clear goal um, for the discussion. So everybody's on the same page. In addition, you should always understand the skills and abilities of your teammates, and this way you can put them to use. And finally, always be willing to listen and be polite. I think that's an important skill. People have egos, and people want to be heard. And if someone's ego is bruised, they might not want to contribute as much, and that's a shame. Uh, it seems like common sense, but I've seen it many times, and I feel like we all need reminders to do so. So next, I want to talk a little bit more about hackathons. So how do you come up with the idea for it? How do you present it? And finally, what happens after a hackathon? So first, this is also a common misconception. You don't need to know everything about everything. You don't need to know how Stable Diffusion works if you want to use it. If sure, if you want to make changes to it or do research on it, yeah, definitely. But and sometimes it might help to know how it works to understand the limitations of it. But I remember when I did the Stable Diffusion hackathon, I had no idea how it works. But it definitely helps to understand the limitations and what use cases they have. So it's important to do resource to verify the resource, to read through some resources. One resource that was told to me by AI21's Yotam was Helm, which describes how the language models are evaluated and in what use cases they can be used. In addition, you can read the use cases on various services. So Cohere, they have a dedicated page for what their large language models can do. Hugging Face Hub and their forums, they provide the latest and greatest models. Like they yeah, they provide all new information on that. It's really good to keep up to date with that. LangChain as well. They have various integrations with all kinds of services. I'll actually paste the link of LangChain in the Twitch chat. Uh, for you guys to check it out, because I think reading through the integrations is a really good idea, specifically on the large language model side. Finally, it's really important to understand the limitations, because I see a lot of people, they think AI is magic, but it's not. They have problems. They have things that need to be solved by integrating with various other technologies. One particular example is ChatGPT and the Monty Hall problem. If you're not familiar with the Monty Hall problem, it's essentially a game show where there's three doors. One of the doors has a Ferrari behind it and two goats behind the other two doors. And so if you ask ChatGPT to solve that problem, yes, it can solve it. But if you change the question slightly and say that you have glass doors, and you say that ChatGPT chooses the one with the car, uh, the question is, would ChatGPT still switch? And it would still switch because it still thinks it's the Monty Hall problem, when it's not. So these are some of the problems with large language models. They'll try and ascribe patterns to things that may not fit that pattern. In addition, they might hallucinate. So validation is a huge problem in large language models, and it doesn't really work when you have real world liability that could be a problem for it. So for example, if I were to use large language models in a medical way, uh, there's huge liability problems with that. How can you trust exactly what they're saying? So instead, you can pair it up with a vector database, and that has validated results, and so you have a viable product with that. Yeah, so you definitely need to know the limitations and the basic capabilities of all the technologies, to be able to create a product that works. So now I want to talk more about how do you actually come up with ideas? Like, where do ideas come from? So I think there's two systems in your brain. One's your fast brain, which is your automatic, intuitive. This is your operating quickly with little conscious effort. You have it uses mental shortcuts to quickly process information and make decisions. Then you have your slow brain, which is your deliberate, analytical side of your brain. It requires conscious effort and attention. You need to actively focus on it. And this part of your brain you're going to use for complex problem solving, critical thinking. It's your logical thought process. So you have to figure out a way to use both sides of your brain to make sure that you get the right ideas, and that involves understanding your learning patterns. For me, when I was in university, it took me a while to realize that I wasn't learning anything in class. So after second year, I stopped going to class and just started reading the material on my own, and I found that was a way better way for me to learn. So definitely try and identify your learning patterns. Yeah, a little more on the fast brain and the slow brain. So your fast brain, it works very fast, but it can have biases and errors in your judgment. And your slow brain, well, it's slow, so you probably don't want to use it for everything. So ideally, you would use your fast brain to come up with ideas and your slow brain to verify it. And that's literally the only way to train it. So um, I'm not sure if you want to take time out of your day, but spend some time thinking about an idea, thinking about a random idea, and then start critically thinking about it, saying, is it a viable idea? Is this a good idea? And I'll talk more about how to identify it's a good idea a little later. So I also want to talk about when do you get your best ideas. So you want to be in a relaxed state of mind. For me, I get a lot of my ideas when I'm about to fall asleep. So I keep a notepad handy. So I write them down if one comes to me. Um, Another good way is to be aware of a problem, but not focused on it. So if you're focused on it, you find you might get frustrated. Whereas if you're doing some other menial task, like if you're chopping vegetables, but you're still aware of a problem and you still be thinking about it, and you might come to a realization without even realizing it. Another interesting thing is flow state. There's a lot of research that goes into how to get into flow state. Sometimes it can be as simple as just sitting down at your computer and listening to the music that you like and just doing the work. So I'll talk about more about the criteria for what's a good idea. Uh, Essentially, it's fixing a pain point. So is it something that is bothering people? And then also you have to look at existing solutions and if you can improve them. Then you also have to consider the market. Who is going to use this idea? So, for example, Web Indexer, which is the question answering tool for information on websites, who is actually going to use that? So, websites are the market. That's who I would sell the product to. But how would I convince them to buy it? I have to convince them that it has business value. So, one way to do that is to do A/B testing. So, I'll take their website and I'll incorporate that the tool into it and compare it to another website which doesn't have the tool and see whether customers actually buy more products or whatever the metric is for business value. So A/B testing is one option, or you can do a research group. Then you also have to consider your business model. So these are more the later stages. So would you want to deliver your product as a one-time purchase? And this is typically a software package or a subscription. Yeah, a software package. Another option is to do subscription based, and this has benefits because you maintain customer retention and you have a predictable source of revenue. Another option is resource-based costs, and this is a lot better with large language models because you can offload the cost of using the large language models to the customer. And finally, the tech part, which it comes back to the black box knowledge. Is it really possible? What are the limitations? What are the problems with it? Is it a good idea? And so that comes back to verifying whether this idea is good or not. So you come up with an idea and then you use your slow brain to assess whether it's a good idea. And that way you're training your fast brain to essentially like a large language model to come up with those ideas and make sure they're good ideas. So next I want to talk about how to present your idea. And I think this is probably the most important skill. You could have the most revolutionary idea, but if you don't know how to present it, nobody's going to listen to you. So for Web Indexer or for all of my projects, I use this general template, which is the classic what, why, how, when, and who. So what is just your elevator pitch. You want to be able to describe the project in 1 or 2 lines. Uh, then, so for Web Indexer, it was the question answering tool to find specific information on websites. Then you have the why, which is what is the problem and what are the existing solutions. So you can assess whether your product is better than the existing solutions. Then you can talk about how. So how did you solve the problem? And uh, in this particular section, you have to be mindful of how much technical language you're using because sometimes the audience is not too familiar with the technical jargon. So yeah, you have to assess who your audience is. And you should definitely include some design choices because it's important to show that you've considered alternatives. Um, and another tip is to always include diagrams. Diagrams are much easier to learn, much easier to see compared to just a wall of text. So would definitely recommend diagrams. Then we move on to the when, which is the future work. So what are the next steps? And what do you see? What do you see as the future for your product? And finally, the who, which is what is the business case? Who is your market? Why are they going to use your product? How are they going to use it? So these are all questions that you would answer in your presentation. So next, I want to talk about life after hackathons, specifically in my experience. So you have two main options, I think, which is taking a product and making a startup, or becoming an independent contractor with the publicity you get from winning hackathons. So I'm going to focus on the second one. So I was contacted by organizations to present their product or to make a product out of to make a project out of their product, sort of as a personal hackathon. And so that there's some different contract types that you can do. One of them is paid services. So one is that if you don't really want to sell the code, you want to keep the code rights to yourself, but sell the product itself, then you can do a paid services contract. Then there's assignment of rights contracts, which means you're actually selling the code. They own the code now. You have service and management, which means you're offering to maintain service and make sure that the product stays up to date. And if it has any bugs, they can contact you. So you can look into that. Then as for fee types, there's a couple options. One of them is a retainer fee. And generally you want to do this if you have a lot of knowledge to offer. So if the company is working on products and you can really offer a lot of knowledge in that domain, then a retainer fee is absolutely the right way. But most clients would prefer an outright project fee. And this is in contrast to an hourly fee, because then they know how much the actual project will cost, so they can know whether they can afford it right away. And it's always important to remember that they're paying for your expertise. So if you're considering an hourly fee, you have a lot of experience in it, so they've got to consider your expertise in it as well. Yeah, so that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it was insightful.
Yes, I'm sure it was, and I'm ready to join for Q&A session. And I really have a few questions about it. And I even wrote it down while I was looking for your answers. Guys, just to make sure, are we logging on the stream or we are fine? Please let me know, because for me it seems like a bit lagging, and I hope it's only for me. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I have, while people are writing ask questions regarding the idea formation, I have a really question for you, because you completed a lot of hackathons. And actually, I'm interested, what's the difference for you of good idea for the hackathon and good startup idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when you're doing the hackathon, you can focus a little less on the market. Um, I remember when I was doing the Stable Diffusion hackathon, though, like one of the judges' criteria was what is the market, and that was different from the AI Transformers hackathon. So in a way, it depends a little bit on what the judges are looking for. But yeah, if you're in the real world, that it's all about business value, it's all about the market. So it's less focused on the idea and whether you can, whether you have an actionable plan to do. So yeah, I'd say there's definitely more focus on market in real world applications.
All right, and second question also related to the business value. When you were preparing ideas for all of these hackathons you completed, and it was actually a lot, did you focus first on the things you really like to build, so it was fun for you to build, or more on really business value? Because I remember you had different types of projects. So it was research app, yeah, that helps actually researchers to find the content. you had Stable Diffusion like Stories Builder, and on the AI21 you had Web Indexer, so completely different types of projects. And what was the plan for each one? And did you focus first on what you like or what would be useful for users?
I think it was a combination of both. Um, a lot of it was a learning experience for me. I was fairly new to large language models as a service. Yeah, so a lot of it was learning, and I'm always interested in learning, and I very much liked it. But I like the factor of business value. That was definitely a huge part of it. There were some ideas that I think I came up with, or that were as option. They were options, but they were discounted purely because of the business value, as you say. But generally, I try to just think about what would I like to use, or put myself in the perspective of someone who would be interested in using it, so your audience, um, and just asking myself, what would I like to see? How do I make this easier for them? And just asking yourself the critical questions about that. But yeah, definitely focusing on what you like is a great motivation as well, because that way you get to satisfy your own curiosity, and your own
Uh,
interests.
Completely. And did you try also to build an app that can be useful for you in your job?
Yeah, so right now, I'm working on on a project, which is a job application project, and it's powered by large language models, because I think they'd be great at writing cover letters instead of me writing them. And I like it to be able to add my own personal touch to the cover letters, as well as building your resume specifically for the job description. So that's a project I'm working on right now. And because it'd be very useful for me and for anybody else who's applying for jobs, and is a little tired of the repetitive nature of applying for jobs.
It is definitely. I would love to see the project. So is it the hackathon project or you just building it on site?
It's independent. I
Okay,
haven't
independent.
sent it for a hack.
All right. And let me ask the final question. If guys in the chat, if you still have something you are interested in, yeah, we just have commented it's great presentation. If you have some questions to Rahel, I'm more than happy to ask. And I have my last one that I prepared. Actually, what skills you developed during the hackathon, and in general, like can hackathon help you in developing skills, or it just a great way to use or to test yourself, and your skills?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, my initial thought, like before, about a month ago, I would have thought that there were no transferable skills from hackathons. But I think it's also a great way to get a product out in a limited time. But actually, those skills that I've learned from that, they've sort of bounced me from, or interested me now to learn more about it. So really, the hackathons were a stepping stone to more knowledge, to learning more. So
Mm.
even if the transferable skills are not super high, and that's only because a lot of companies have not yet truly integrated AI on such a massive scale just yet, um, and so transferable in that way. But also, it's a stepping stone for any future endeavors.
All right, thank you. And I have one more question from the chat. I can't really get it, but if you will, probably you saw it as well. What about using Bloom in real world projects?
I'm not familiar with Bloom. Um,
Me neither. Let me just Google it. I guess
I might notice something
something
else.
really easy. No, I actually didn't find anything.
Oh,
The person did just ask. Maybe you can specify a bit.
it's
Oh,
a
Bloom.
data delivery platform for business operations. Oh, large language models. Oh, is this the um I don't remember. I see. Okay. I haven't worked with these. I don't even remember seeing them in Helm's large language models evaluation. Um, yeah, I mean, I would say yeah, I haven't worked with it. Um, yeah, I'm not too sure if it's in Helm, like a holistic evaluation for large language models. Um, but I'd say definitely check that out and see if it's there and see what use cases you can use it for, because they have pretty good coverage of all the different scenarios. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know too much about Bloom.
Has more parameter than GPT-3. So is it text generated model as well?
Yeah, it seems to be a large
Or
language model. Um, yeah,
if,
yeah, my recommendation is
okay.
just to check out Helm and see if they have information on it.
By the way, if you see the technology really interesting for you and you would love to build it with it, so it's very good idea to tell to Loblog team because our partner managers are more than happy to contact with the company and make a hackathon on it as usual. So just also let us know. And this Bloom it seems very interesting for me as well. So I will give this information for the team. We will definitely take a look on it. All right. Thank you so much, Rahil. I do not see many questions. Maybe you want to close the talk with some word?
Um, yeah, I'm gonna post a link to the Helm resource. It's a really great
Okay.
resource if you want to understand more about the capabilities of large language models. Um, yeah, it was great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Uh, definitely do some hackathons if you're interested in learning. Great learning opportunity. Um, yeah, thank you for having me.